Everybody, to all the guests, and also I would like to thank all the people who shared and participated and prepared for this panel, and I am glad to be with you to give us this opportunity to talk to you. The title of the panel is a little bit maybe explaining what we are doing in exact conflict in Syria. We managed something in our areas. I'll try to explain what we have done in our areas. As everybody remembers, we were struggling against this regime since 2004, and when the Syrian revolution beginning at 2011, we were part of it because we were looking for our freedom, for our democratic rights. And along 1 year, all 2011 to 2012, we were just like all the Syrians struggling for, calling for freedom by demonstrations on the streets and announcing to the regime. And from the other side, we were organizing our people, because we believe that the organized people can do everything. So we had no choice except to depend on our people. And this is what was the beginning of the democracy, to depend on the people. At 2012, everybody was looking, we felt that all the sides sharing in this revolution, they are not actually doing revolution to change the society, to change maybe the internal relation for the societies, which is the actual revolution. They were just looking for the power sharing. So everybody was looking for the powers, especially outside power, to support them against the regime. But we had no choice other than to depend on our people. So this is what was our point, to believe on democracy. And according to that, prevent our people to go into the meaningless, war against those brutals and the regime. We were enforced to announce the democratic self-administration in our areas, to do something, or to organize our people there. And then in 2013, we were enforced to announce 3 cantons, depending on the people again, our people. And then, as you know, since then, everybody was saying, well, they are looking for the maybe separatists. They are trying to build their Kurdistan and so, which is actually not. And then, as you know, maybe recently we are announced for the federalism as a solution for our areas and for all the Syria. Why I am saying so? Because by all these steps, by announcing the democratic self-administration in 2012, when we liberated our areas from the regime forces, we were just depending on our people. So we believe that the democracy, the power of the people, is the more strongest, and we didn't have other forces to depend on except our people. And because of that, we believed on the democracy. And for that reason, depending on the people, it means you have to organize your people. That's what we have done in the institutions and the social organizations, and for the women, for the youth people, for all the people. All the society, maybe members. So we had to organize them very well. This included also the defense units like YPG, which is the People Defending Unit, and YPG, which is the Women Defending Units and people. So other than that, we have to depend also on the other components living together, like the Syrians Turkmens, Arabs living together in our areas. So by one meaning of that we were enforced to implement the democracy. The democracy we are looking now is not the democracy coming from the top. The democracy coming from the people themselves by organizing the society in the institutions and taking their, the power from them. This is the point which is everybody was surprised because nobody was with the Kurdish people. We were just depending on ourselves, on our people, on our components, and even for the women, in the same case. We depended on the women who used to be nothing, in the old societies or even in the other parts of Syria. They were free in our areas just because of this democracy. And now all the institutions we have in our areas, we have a co-sharing system, which is the women are sharing the men maybe at least for 40% for all the organizations. This was our point and our force we were talking from the society. And the result, it could liberate by depending and implementing this kind of democracy in our society. We were able to liberate our areas in 2012. Then those brutal attacks when started in our areas, which were supported by Turkey, we could defend ourselves also. And even maybe the yourselves and the people who were maybe seeing what was going in Syria, the Syrian army couldn't stand against those brutals, those jihadists, and Iraqi army couldn't stand against them. Just the Kurds and our system, our democratic system, could stand against them, and the victory would be gained in many places like Kobani, like Serikani, like Afrin, and then maybe in Shangal, and still those brutals, they were defeated in our areas just because we have a democracy. This democracy we have, it means everybody, every member of the society feels that the problem is his problem and he has to do something against those attacks in our areas and against those brutals. So it means sharing the people, women, children, young people, and everybody, all members of the society, they feel that the problem is their problem and they have to do something about that. And even not only in our areas, and also maybe our Kurdish people in abroad, in diaspora, also they feel that they are part of this struggle, just because of this democracy we have in our areas. Other than that, pro-democracy forces and countries like the United States, maybe Europe, some countries of Europe, also they started to support us. As you know, this International Alliance Against ISIS, and so when they started to support us in Kobani and the other areas, just because they found the people, and those people, organized people, they are worth, to be supported. And just because of that, just because of this heroic stance by our people, they prefer to make a kind of alliance between us and them. So this is the democracy. It's maybe if you consider all the East, it's a little strange. To have for this mentality, this dictatorial or the despotic mentality in the Middle East, to find a Kurdish society with the other components, Syrians and the others, living together within democracy, and even the society with those institutions and organizations dealing with each other, with the women's rights, with the It's a kind of sophisticated democracy, maybe. So this is the PowerPoint also for the society. So the countries that the pro-democracy sides, like countries like United States even, they try to support us, and now we are still going ahead. And in the situation we are living now, we are very confident of our people and our organizations in the area. That doesn't mean that we don't have some mistakes in somewhere, because I mean, in the Middle East, we used to live under the dictatorship and despotic governments, I mean, maybe since decades. So, and the democracy is a kind of cultural, so we have to learn a lot of things. Maybe we have some mistakes even, but we are learning from our mistakes and trying to mend what we can do. So we believe Kurdish society and the people are living together now in our areas, in this North Syria, Rojava federalism. There are maybe leaders kind of leading the democracy approach in the Middle East, all Middle East. And because of that, we have now strong enemies against us. There are two kinds. One kind doesn't accept the Kurdish being, and the others are afraid for the democracy we are implementing in our areas. Of course, those are the regime and maybe the Turkish government and the Iranians and the other forces in the Gulf and the others. They are afraid of this democracy we are living, I mean, in our areas. Because from one side you can find those regimes that still don't believe in the democracy, and they don't give the right of the women. I mean, even they don't accept the women as a part of the society or just a human. And from the other sides, in our areas, we can find the women became not only defending herself, but she was able to defend the society also, and all the values of the humanity and democracy. So this is what I'm going to say. The democracy is really makes everybody sharing the power and to be able to defend their society and defend their country and defend. It's really a huge power for the society, and because of that, maybe it's a little bit a unique experience in the Middle East from our side. And as the Kurdish people and those components we are living together, and now we have announced as a federalism for all Syria, not only for our part, for all Syria. So it means we are looking to make all the Syria democratic Syria, and maybe we have some dreams. It's a nice dream really, to expand this democracy to all over the Middle East, for all the nations to live in peace, in the brotherness, maybe in future. It's a nice dream really, but we are after that. And of course, I mean, as I mentioned, this is, I mean, between this war going on and this brutal war going on, to have such experience in the Middle East is really, it's very interesting, I mean, our experience. That was I had to mention that, yeah, if you have any questions for this subject and the situation now, we are ready to answer it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Salih, for being with us. And if you could stay with us actually until the Q&A session starts, please stay with us. Now, Ms. Amberin, Zaman.
And anyone who's familiar with the geography of northern Syria knows that there are no mountains in northern Syria. There are no mountains for the Syrian Kurds to retreat to. So they are in a particularly vulnerable position. And so when we talk about consolidating democracy in northern Syria, when we talk about this federation, we first of all have to examine, the security situation. And Mr. Muslim talked about the multiple challenges, enemies that the Syrian Kurds face. Now, if I were a member of the YPG today, and I was in northern Syria somewhere, perhaps near Rumaylan Air Base, I'd be feeling hugely confident because I would see these American special forces coming out of their helicopters or however they get there, I'm not sure. And I'd be feeling, yes, quite confident. President Obama just authorized the deployment of 250 additional special forces to northern Syria, and we expect them to be embedded with the Syrian Democratic forces. And so there must be quite a bit of buoyancy among the Syrian Kurds today. But I'm going to perhaps sort of play the devil's advocate and ask the question, once ISIS is defeated, will the United States still be in Syria? What is their vision for a future Syria? And I'm not sure that any of us here has an answer. So as Syrian Kurds, really, if you're looking at, looking beyond the battle with ISIS, as I'm sure they are, you need to ask the question, how do I guarantee my security? We just saw a big dust-up in the city of Qamishli recently, where the Syrian regime forces attacked the Syrian Kurds there, and tens of people were killed, including civilians. And at the same time, even as the Asayish, the YPG, and the regime forces were negotiating a truce in Aleppo, Syrian regime forces were aerially bombarding Kurdish civilians in Sheikh Mahsud. And did we hear the US State Department say anything about this? Not really. Did we hear an international outcry? Not really. So this begs the question of what happens, for instance, if sometime in the future the regime, attacks the Kurds? Will the United States, will the Western community rise to their defense? And I don't think we have the answer. So we need to go back to the map, look at our, geography, and recognize that the longest border that the Syrian Kurds will have will be with Turkey. And unfortunately, I think that Rojava is very much hostage to Turkey at the moment, hostage to the Kurdish problem in Turkey. The way in which Turkey resolves its Kurdish problem, if ever, and I hope it will have a direct impact on the future of Rojava. Now, when we look at the situation in Turkey today, sadly, it's very, very bleak, very, very dark. There was a moment last year on June 7th when we all had tremendous hope when this gentleman here got 13.8% of the vote, and not just from Kurdish people, but from Turkish people, from across Turkey, including from my mother, a very, very staunch Kemalist. She wouldn't like the description, but dinosaur. And that was really a moment of tremendous hope for all of us. It was a moment that the state of Turkey, I don't mean the government, the state of Turkey should have seized to move towards a peaceful solution of this problem that's holding Turkey back, but it didn't. So we need to look ahead and see what we can do now. And unfortunately, for now, I can't say I'm very hopeful, because it's very clear that Mr. Erdogan is not interested in resuming the peace talks at all. And when we look at parts of southeastern Turkey today, sadly, they're not very different from Syria. When you look at Cizre, pictures coming out of Cizre, when you see pictures coming out of Şırnak, out of Sur, they're not very different from Hama or Homs, and it's heartbreaking. And I was there last month, and I have to say I was heartbroken. But of course, when we talk, we're all very familiar with, the Turkish state policy. We know how brutal the Turkish state can be, but I also want to raise the question of what the PKK is doing as well. I frankly don't understand what the PKK's endgame in Turkey is. I don't understand why they decided to shift their operations into the heart of urban centers where people, ordinary people, live, drawing the wrath of the Turkish army upon them. I really don't understand that. And I think that the fact that Abdullah Öcalan is no longer in the picture, that we no longer hear his voice, we no longer know what his thinking is, has made things much, much worse, because there's a big vacuum there. And I think that the gentlemen who reside in Kandil, the military commanders, are just that. They're military people. They're not politicians. They are not in a position, really, in my view, to really move this, this process forward. And I think the people who can do that are sitting here now, but sadly, the Turkish parliament, at the instigation of this government, is trying to strip them of their parliamentary immunity and perhaps will send them to jail. So it's a very, very depressing picture. We know that this government here, the United States, has been putting immense pressure on the PKK to call a unilateral ceasefire. The PKK does not seem interested in that. What they need to do, really, the United States, is to really, I think, raise the volume of criticism of Turkey's human rights record in the southeast, to make a big fuss about what the parliament is about to do. I'm not hearing much of that. And I think that's all I have to say. I'm sorry to end on this bleak note.
Thank you so much for Zaman, for your insightful talk. I'm sure you'll get lots of questions. Now we'll listen to Mr. Mehmet.
We'll need to use a few PowerPoint slides to make my point. Just 1 second, please. He was shouting pro-Kurdish party slogans, and I wanted to ask him, what is it that you want? And he told me, I want democracy. The word democracy so far has been mentioned so many times. And as an 11-year-old kid, who I wasn't even sure he actually knew what he meant by that, hey, I want democracy. You know, the social science in me wanted to collect some data, and I went ahead and decided to ask him, so what is democracy? And that 11-year-old kid said, I think it has to do something with equality. That 11-year-old kid, I think, summarized it really well if you look at the most fundamental aspect of the concept of democracy. Equality between men and women, equality between Muslims and non-Muslims, equality between minorities and majorities as well. So what I would like to talk about today, at least in Turkey since 1984, there has been a civil war, an armed conflict going on, what I would like to call it a Kurdish struggle for equality. If we describe it as Kurdish struggle for equality, we also need to understand the struggle is for democracy as well. The very essence, the heart of democracy is the logic of democracy. When it comes to the logic of democracy, I guess gender equality and relationship between different religions and how members of different religions are treated arguably are much more difficult to accomplish than just holding free and fair elections. Of course, free and fair elections are important, but absolutely it is not sufficient to claim a democratic political system. Now, in order to do that, I wanted to look at, I think I can skip this, direct consequences, negative consequences of war. Every one of you in this room know much better than I do that war is a horrible thing. Nobody would like to fight, nobody would like to kill or die if there was another option. So I'm not going to spend time on the negative consequences, direct and indirect negative consequences of conflict. What I would like to talk about, how the Kurdish struggle for equality has actually created and transformed the Kurdish society by laying the groundwork for a democratic political culture. So violent conflict, when we go through violent conflict, conceptually speaking, we see the expansion of women's public roles and responsibilities. Now, up until 20 years ago, in the Kurdish part of Turkey, this is arguably one of the least developed part of the country, and arguably was, may not necessarily still is, was one of the most conservative part of the country with strong patriarchal social values. Yet, nevertheless, when you look at the Kurdish region in Turkey, women are a part of daily lives, women are a part of politics, they are in the parliament, they are fighting for the logic of equality. Also, when you go through the civil war, when a Muslim Kurdish people is fighting for equal rights against a government dominated by Muslim Turkish people, or when Muslim Kurdish people, predominantly Muslim Kurdish people in Syria and Iraq, fighting against the force of darkness, Islamic State, and other Sunni Islamist groups, one way or the other, you start re-examining and questioning the value of religion in your life. And as you go through questioning the value of religion in your life, am I a Kurd? Am I a Turk? Am I an Arab? Or am I just a Muslim? All of these identities start competing with each other. And through this competition, through this reforging and forging this national identity, religion becomes just one source of authority. It no longer is just the most important part of your identity. Of course, make no mistake, Kurds are a Muslim majority people, and many Kurds still are practicing Muslims. But in the last 30 years, the struggle for equality has transformed them and has made them rethink about the value of religion in their lives and the role of women and the acceptance of gender equality. Now, so the idea is, can conflict-related violence create positive attitudes toward women? Which I would like to describe it as the bright or the other side of the conflict, as much as it has horrible consequences, no doubt about that. And also, conflict-related violence, can it actually lead to greater secularization? Now, several of us, and many of us have pointed out, okay, United States should work with the Kurds in Syria, in Turkey, in Iraq, or in the Middle East, generally speaking, because the Kurds are arguably the most reliable, the most effective force against Islamic State, but also they are much more secular and they are pro-democratic. They do have democratic elements in their political culture. Now, to do that, let me just get you to the most important aspect of my research. This is based on a larger project that I have been doing in the last 3 years, actually. We contacted about 4,000 ordinary citizens in Diyarbakir, Van, and Şanlıurfa, 3 Kurdish majority provinces in the eastern part of the country. More than 2,000 of these randomly selected individuals agreed to participate in our survey, and we ended up asking them a few questions about their views towards gender equality, their views toward religion, etc., etc. So when we asked them, do you agree or disagree whether men make better political leaders than women do? And also we asked them another question. If a woman earns more money than her husband, it's almost certain to cause problems. To what extent do you agree, disagree with this statement? So we also asked them several questions about whether they have been exposed to violence. Now, I think I don't have to talk about the amount of exposure to violence in the Kurdish region, but based on our data, about 60% of people who participated in our study in Diyarbakir, they were one way or the other were suffered, exposed to violence. So every other person, so if you randomly pick one person from out of Diyarbakir population, the chances are you will pick every other person have been a victim of the armed conflict. And then we wanted to find out, okay, what's going on here? So I don't want to bore you with these numbers. Let me just show you a graph which I think is much easier to convey my message. Those who were victimized by the war, the struggle for equality, the struggle for equal rights, democratic rights for the Kurds in Turkey, the more you were victimized, the more likely you would either disagree or strongly disagree with the statement that men make better political leaders than women. So now, many of you would agree with me on this. 20 years ago, women would walk behind men, even in a place like Diyarbakir, just 20 years ago. In 20 years and 30 years, the struggle for recognition, the struggle for equality, therefore for democracy, has fundamentally transformed the political culture of the Kurdish people. Let me just show you another one. So how do I measure whether the Kurdish people have developed a much more secular political culture? How important is religion in your life? How often do you pray at Mass? Do you regularly pray 5 times a day? And the last question that we ask, whenever science and religion conflict, religion is always right. Do you agree, disagree with these statements? The results were really interesting. Of course, again, you could be a Muslim, you could be a Christian, a Jew, or an atheist, and still be secular. Secularism and religion are not necessarily mutually exclusive. As long as you put religion into its proper place, that it's no longer the ultimate source of authority, you could still be a religious and a secular person. Now let me show you this. Whenever science and religion conflict, religion is always right. Whether you agree or disagree with this statement, 2,100 people, based on their responses, those who had suffered because of the violence in the Kurdish part of Turkey, excuse me, they strongly disagree or disagree with this statement. So when we talk about why should the United States listen to the Kurds? Why should the United States pay attention to what is happening in Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and other parts of the Middle East? I think we all have come to the conclusion that Syria and Iraq, as we know them, are no more. They are crumbling. The Syrian and the Iraqi central governments have failed to sustain their power in the entire region. It is a fact. It's not a hypothesis at this time. The question is, several of us also have repeated the expression that Kurds have no friends but the mountains. That is true, but if the United States would like to create stable, democratic, and secular Middle East, perhaps the United States has no friends but the Kurds. So I would like to somewhat change that expression. So it's actually an easy choice. I would like to take your question. So the choice is, we have to make a choice between this, a horrible picture, even more horrible, and this. The choice is easy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mehmet Gurses. Now we are going to open the floor for questions. But before we do that, okay. All right.
Salih from Northwestern University. I would like to first start showing my sincere respect to those fallen and wounded for the freedom of Kurdish people and Kurdistan. I think we could have had a small moment of silence in the morning. I don't know why we didn't, but maybe there's a reason that I don't know. I would like to ask Mr. Salih Muslim something on their relationship with the U.S. U.S. looks like a critical partner and a decision maker maybe. What can he say about their recent relationship with the U.S. government, whether there is any decline in relationship or an increase, and any signs of recognizing the autonomy Thank you.
No, next.
Well, nothing even did.
Well,
Well, the question was, he says, what is the nature of your relationship with the state at the moment? At what level, your relations is continuing, and do you think U.S. might recognize the
Signs of recognition.
yes? Do you see any signs of recognition, official recognition, from the U.S.?
Well, thank you for the question. Our relations with the United States, maybe it goes about 2 years ago, when we met some officials, and they said very clearly, we are ready to coordinate with you in the military field, but not in political and diplomatic field. So we said, okay, we can coordinate on the, in the level of the army and in the, armed forces. And still we are going this way. There is a very good coordination, as we know, between our forces. It was YPG at the beginning, and then it turned to Democratic Syrian forces. And now they are very well coordinating. But in the political side, we have we have relations. Maybe we have some talks, but we don't have any coordination in this side, which we feel it's wrong. I think we should make even political coordination also, especially for this time. We are, as you know, we are in the Geneva approach, and in Geneva talks, we still didn't participate because I think it was related to the United States stand with us. Maybe we can understand because they have a wide relations with the other countries for their interest with Turkey and the other countries, maybe even Iran and some others. But it doesn't mean we wouldn't have in future, some political coordinations and political relations. Maybe if we have it, I would be lucky to be there instead of talking by Skype, you see.
Thank you so much. Yes, gentleman in the back.
Hi, this is Kasım Miller with the Anadolu Agency. My question will be to Mr. Muslim again. The American administration is constantly denying that there is a connection or link between the PYD, YPG, and PKK. But we know that we have seen that PKK helped YPG in liberating Kobani and so on. What do you think of this? Why do you think the Americans are trying to deny the link between the two organizations? And also, whether if there is not, can you confirm that there is not a link, or to what extent there is a link? Thank you.
No, analysis is
well, his question is there a relation between the PKK and YPG? And if there is one, why the U.S. keeps denying this connection between the two sides?
Well, actually, as the Kurdish side, belonging to the Kurdish nation, we have a relation with all Kurdish parties. With the PDK and PUK and Gurses and the others, and PKK is among them. But that doesn't mean that we have any organic relations or coordinating. Of course, we would like to have a good relations with everybody because we are depending on the Kurdish society. Kurdish society are represented in these parties. If there was no support from the Kurds in KRG, the Kurdish parties and the Kurdish people, and even the Iranian Kurdish and the North Kurdistan people, maybe we wouldn't gain these victories in Rojava. So we need our people, we need the Kurdish people, but we don't have any organic relations, with the PKK And even for YPG, maybe they can get help from everybody, but it doesn't mean that they have organic relations with them. I mean, the relation that sympathy or belonging to one nation, this is naturally to have a kind of a dialogue or to have some relation, but it doesn't mean that you are taking orders from somebody or coordinating with them. This is different because we believe in Rojava. Our case is different, even politically and even militarily, because we have different forces, different regimes. So because of that, our case, they have their specialities. Because of that, we don't, I mean, we are independent from this side. And this, everybody should see and notice this point.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kasim Kurd. I have an answer for Amberin Zaman because everybody's going to ask questions. She's in the city, so...
We don't really take comments.
Just if you keep it very short. Very short. We know that Turkish government, Turkish state always does same thing. We don't need anything to do. So there is a one saying in Turkish, gözünün üstünde kaş var diye. They could find any reason to kill Kurds in Roboski, Sheikh Said Dersim, etc. Also, last thing, my wife, parents are Kemalists too. They voted because of against Erdogan, not because of democracy, not because of they love democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that gentleman.
So, hi everyone.
No comment, just questions, please.
We spoke about relationship between USA and Kurds, but what is relationship between Peshmerga and Rojava? How is the relationship? I wonder. And
Vous avocat?
Beli. Islami, Mr. Salih. Beli.
Reza Dengat?
No, I'm not.
Well, he is one.
Yes, of course. I mean, Peshmerga is a very valuable Kurdish force also. We have a struggle against ISIS in South Kurdistan or by YPG and the Democratic Syrian forces in Rojava. But we have a difference attributes for each other. I mean, we are a little bit different. And of course, I mean, we would like to have very good coordination also, as happened in Kobani when YPG and the 160 Peshmerga members, they came to Kobani to fight against Daesh in these tight days. It was, and they gained the victory. They were part of it. We look for this coordination also. I mean, maybe in future we can do it. But that doesn't mean the involvement for each others maybe work or the field. And when needed, maybe we already, as you know, there are Peshmerga and YPG in Shengal defending Shengal. We would like to have a good relations also over there in the other parts. We need it. But now, this is different from the political views and political relations. We know KRG, they have their own interests, and of course, for our Rojava, we are independent of our policy. This is something different. But at this time, we need some Peshmergas, I mean, in Rojava to help us because they have their own struggle in Iraq and in KRG. But still, we have good relations when needed, I think.
Thank you. Well, actually, I have a question for Zaman. You talk about
Reasons for that. First of all, the media environment in Turkey is growing increasingly repressive, as you probably know. And it's now extending to the foreign media as well. In the correspondent covering the southeast, how difficult it was to operate there. And once again, it's become very difficult for journalists to go to the southeast. You heard the remarks made by the Prime Minister concerning the BBC interview with the PKK, saying this was terrorist propaganda. So there's that very basic sort of problem of not being able to actually travel there, and the fear among resident foreign correspondents increasingly that they'll get kicked out if they write unfavorable stories. But there's also, of course, this trade-off that I see of the United States on the one hand having this relationship with the YPG, knowing that there are these connections with the PKK, but perhaps sort of compensating for that by remaining almost, tone-deaf, silent about what's going on in the southeast. So there seems to be that kind of trade-off. And I think it's very unfortunate, of course.
How about the political aspect of it? I mean, don't you think Western states' governments are also kind of encouraging journalists to stay quiet about certain issues, including the Kurdish issue?
The last I checked, in the United States and in most European countries, governments did not interfere with what journalists wrote or didn't.
And given what is going on in Germany, for instance, what the Chancellor in Germany did, right?
Well, I mean, there's this arcane law that exists that, criminalizes insulting foreign leaders, which was last pulled out, I think, when the Shah of Iran traveled to Germany.
Yeah.
But nothing came of it. I think Mrs. Merkel is in a rather desperate situation.
That is
and
true.
that whole refugee thing obviously informs her policies on Turkey, but I think it would be unfair to say that to compare Europe and the United States, the media environment in Europe and the United States with that of Turkey, which is increasingly repressive.
Thank you. Yes.
Hey, my name is Salih.
Hello everyone, my name is Salih. I'm with Chicago Kurdish Culture Center. I have a question for Press Salih. We already spoke about US and YPG, PYD relations. We already spoke about Peshmerga and PYD relations. And I would like to get his opinion about PYD and Russia relations and see if Russia has any impact on Syria, in particular Rojava, because we know that Russia has a good relation with the regime. And I would like to just get Mr. Salih's opinion about that. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it.
He said what he wants to hear your opinion on the relationship between Rojava and Russia, the impact of Russia and Rojava.
Russia, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We have maybe some kind of relations, I mean, by talking to each other. I mean, with Russia since 4 years, and I have been to Moscow many times. As you know, recently the Russians, they invade Syria just to support the regime, as everybody knows. They had airstrikes against those brutals, which was our satisfaction also. I mean, we were happy about that, but doesn't mean we have some relations. I mean, a coordination like what we have in the International Alliance. And in the military field, if they have any coordination or any relations, it's through the International Alliance. But independently, we don't have any kind of coordinations with them.
Thank you. Yes.
It's related to the question on the relationship with Russia, but to what extent would the PYD accept federalism in Syria with an Assad regime in power, or is that something that would have to change? And how do you see the relations with Russia that are now being built as working towards that goal? Thank you.
Be okay with Assad staying in power in Syria?
our struggle with the Syrian regime, it didn't start with the Syrian revolution. It starts since 2004. Maybe we were against this regime, and we had a struggle for a long time before the Syrian revolution. And Syrian revolution was our opportunity to organize ourselves more better and to have our own ways for struggling against the regime and those brutals. But with the regime, of course, we are not looking for the independence or to divide Syria. We will be part of the Syrian states in future, but this Syria should be decentralized, democratic Syria, and maybe we are looking for democratic federation of Syria. So at that time, it means this regime wouldn't be existing. I mean, at that time, and this regime wouldn't stay as it is. I mean, as centralized dictatorship or despotic regime. Of course, we are not talking about one person, which is Bashar al-Assad, but we are talking about the Ba'ath Party. They wouldn't have any place in future Syria, we believe.
Thank you.
In your talk, you mentioned twice your mistakes, and I would like to hear more about your mistakes.
The question is, you said you might have made some mistakes in the past, and she would like to hear what kind of mistakes you might have made.
Well, those mistakes mainly are done by the lack of the democratic culture, maybe for the human rights, for the relations between the people, to implement democracy in the best way, maybe settling these organizations, institutions. So because of that, we had a very, maybe consulting all the institutions and the organizations, we know that they would be helpful. I mean, even for now, we are contacting many organizations to train our people. I mean, for Asayish, which is the police force, and to maybe train us for the law, for the constitution, and many things. I mean, the mistakes we are talking about is mainly in this field, because our people, they didn't have any training in this kind of democratic culture and human rights. So we need these points. Maybe we still have some, but it doesn't mean we are not able to mend them or to maybe do it in future. So we are learning from our mistakes. That's why I meant.
Muslim, in the name of Kurdish National Congress of North America, I admire you for creating and implementing such democracy in the time of war in your area. And from time to time we hear other parties, some of the other Kurdish organizations complain. I think you look like your democracy could be infectious. It will be accepted by all parts of Syria. Do you are planning to have, I'm sure you are very popular, to have an council in the area around and sit down with those people? Even if you get election, I'm sure you will be elected all over the places. That's my first question. Second question, from experience.
I didn't get the first question, I'm sorry.
The first question is, he is a popular man, is creating.
Is a popular man.
He's a popular man, and without doubt, he created a democracy, implemented an experience in Syria at the time of the war. So I'm sure this experience will be infectious, will be accepted by all Kurds all over the places. So we hear many times some other Kurdish organization or parties complain of Kamshlo area and this area. So are you planning to, I'm sure if you have in those areas, you will be easily elected. This is the first one. Are you planning to do that? Second.
Are they planning to go for elections?
Yes.
Okay.
My second question. I'm sure you have seen this experience in our area in southern Kurdistan. I'm sure the experience which we have the problem now is in southern Kurdistan. And you are going to, how long you will be in power, and you will have an election, and I'm sure you have many successors.
Ask the second question, please. Get to the question.
question. How did he go for election, and how many times? And I'm sure he have good successor.
Thank you. Reza, dibêje li Kurdistanê li Rojava de hilbijartin çi bibin an ne?
If we are talking about the democracy, I think, when we are talking about the democracy doesn't mean only the elections. Elections, maybe you do the elections for the parliament, maybe for some institutions, but actually the democracy means the free individual, the free persons. And now what we are doing, we are implementing some kind of democracy within the institutions. For example, if we have the women organization, they have their own elections in the women organizations. And also for YPG, their commanders is a kind of democracy. I mean, elections within that one. And all the institutions, we have a democracy in it, and they are doing the elections. But for general elections, for the parliament, I think we are trying to do it, and already the administration has issued the instructions for the elections, how it should be maybe in future, when the environment is convenient for the elections. I think we will do it as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Parvin with the Chicago Cultural Center in Chicago. Obviously, I said that, Chicago. Chicago Kurdish Cultural Center. This question is for the panel, probably. I would like Mr. Salih answer that question first, and then hear from the rest of the panel. My question is, why do you believe that Kurdish or Peshmerga are the only force right now fighting against ISIS, especially when most of the people in Middle East, in Europe, and here in the United States believe that the United States and a few European countries are responsible for the very existence of ISIS? Thank you.
Okay, the question is, so Europe and US are responsible for ISIS? Whether the states are responsible for ISIS, for the existence of ISIS?
What does he think about the notion that the fact that why the Kurdish people are, or the Kurdish forces, are the only force fighting ISIS right now?
Okay.
Why they are alone?
Okay.
When everybody is against ISIS, but we are the ones that's fighting them.
Reza, the question is, why the Kurds are the only force fighting ISIS, while everybody else also seem like they are also against ISIS, but they do not offer help to the Kurds. Why the Kurds remain the only force actually fighting ISIS in Rojava? Right?
Also, most of the world believe that the United States and a few European countries are responsible for the very existence of ISIS.
Okay, yeah. And some people claim that some Western European countries and US are responsible actually for the very existence of ISIS. What is your take on this?
We can see it this way. I mean, the ISIS or the similar organization, they were created for some reasons. I mean, maybe some countries or some sites, they help to be created or to be expanded. And we know some forces like Turkey, they have a good relation with the ISIS till now, and they are supporting them, and they are using the ISIS against the Kurdish people, as has been used in Shergam and then in Kobani and everywhere, and still we have this struggle going on in Shahba area, which is a clave related to Turkish border, and Turkey is not willing to close this clave in order to keep the relations with ISIS. So it means that ISIS is used against the Kurds. What we are only fighting against the ISIS because we are defending ourselves. This is first. And secondly, we are only depending on our source, which is our people. I mean, our people, everybody wants to defend themselves as a society, as a person, because ideologically we are very different. We believe in democracy, and we are shared as a society for this fighting. And our forces, they are just the children of this nation, those people. So Syrians, the same. The threat is not only for the Kurdish people, for the Syrians, for the Arabs living with us, and for the system. So we have to defend our system. So because of that, we are enforced to fight against it. Maybe the ISIS is not dangerous for some people because maybe ideologically they are near each other. I mean, some Sunnis, and so they accept them. And they don't attack some other areas, just like Christians, in which they are located maybe in somewhere else, not close to Daesh. So this is some many reasons. We are the main force fighting against ISIS, and our succeeding is related to the maybe this panel's subject, which is the democracy. We are getting our force from one source, which is the democracy, to depend on our people. So this is the main source for our power, and we are strong to defeat them.
Well, I mean, it was a wonderful answer anyway, but I would like to add one thing. Of course, the ideological relation the other produced this outcome. If the world really believes that the United States is behind ISIS, then the world must be crazy. So, Middle East, of course, is a place where nonsense makes sense. We do live in a geography. It's not an easy geography to live, but ISIS is a terrorist, a horrible terrorist organization that needs to be eliminated, not just contained, and the Kurds are doing a wonderful job helping doing that.
But it should also be noted that ISIS is, as we speak, probably lobbing shells at Deniz. I mean, ISIS is now officially at war with Turkey.
Well, yes.
It remains that Turkey, as last summer, opened the Indian airbase to the US-led coalition against ISIS. And increasingly, Turkey is taking a more active role in trying to crack down on ISIS. We've seen the number of foreign fighters going in and out of Turkey dropping rather dramatically. So clearly, Turkey has finally woken up to the fact that ISIS poses as great a danger to Turkey as it does to the rest of the world, particularly given that 98 kilometers of the Turkish border continues to be controlled by them. And I think minds are now very much focused in Turkey, at the Turkish General Staff, on addressing this.
Yeah, but if they were sincere, don't you think they would let the YPG seal off the border, the 98 kilometers?
I think it makes perfect sense that, given that the SDF has proven itself to be so effective, that Turkey should be cooperating with the SDF. But unfortunately, there's this whole business of, the PKK, YPG, Turkish paranoia about the Kurds that unfortunately informs much of Turkish foreign policy. And until they can overcome that paranoia, it seems that they have trouble making these rational decisions.
My question is for Mr. Salih Muslim. It is said that a couple of times you have applied for the US visa, and apparently so far you haven't been granted the US visa. Do you see any Turkish involvement in the US rejection of your application for the visa? Thank you.
The question is, you have applied for US visa a few times, but you were denied. Do you think the Turks have anything to do with this?
Well, I don't know. We don't relate to Turkey because they wouldn't allow us. But we depend on our American friends, I think they will understand our situation and we will get it. Recently, I applied about 3 months ago in Brussels, but still I'm waiting for the answer. Till now, we haven't received a positive answer.
Yes.
Karwan Zagoy with the Kurdistan Regional Government's mission here in Washington. If I may, on behalf of my colleagues and myself, welcome the distinguished guests. Deniz, I have a three-part question. They're short and they're quick. First, for the panel, this unrest that's happening in southeast Turkey or Bakur, how is this affecting the economic activity within Turkey? Two, also for the panel, what is the relationship today between Erdogan and the army? At the beginning, he tried to bring the army under his control, where it's a civilian-led army. And then finally, if you could relay this to His Excellency Mr. Muslim, Syria unfortunately has become a battleground for these superpowers, mainly the United States and Russia, but also regional powers, Turkey, Saudi, Iran, and others. How do you manage these expectations where you do not, as Kurds, do not end up fighting other people's proxy wars? Thank you.
Well, in terms of being able to measure the economic impact, I'm not in a position of any, figures at the moment, but it's very obvious when you go to the southeast, just going to Diyarbakir, how badly the economy has been affected, especially in Sur, which is the commercial and historical heart of Diyarbakir. Life has come to a standstill, and I'm sure if I were to go to Cizre or to Shirnak or to Nusaybin, I would, see a similar sort of situation there. In terms of your question about the relationship between the army and Erdogan, you just saw that the whole Ergenekon sort of trial was, they were cleared of all those accusations, and that it was somehow declared to be some kind of a huge conspiracy fiction, this whole Ergenekon trial. So clearly the relations between the government, President Erdogan, and the military have improved over time, and that they seem to have a convergence in terms of how they view the situation in northern Syria and in the southeast. It's very clear.
Well, your question about the economic consequences of the ongoing conflict in the southeast is quite obvious. War is destructive, by all means, and it destroys lives and properties. Based on what I have learned from talking to people who live in the region, economically things are getting really worse. But overall, the economy in the region has always been not very good, let me put it that way. Going back to your question about the military and the AKP or Mr. Erdogan, I'm not quite sure, or I'm not quite convinced that what the AKP is doing is just about the AKP government. I think it is beyond the government. I think it is what the Turkish state would like to do. It is the Turkish state policy towards the Kurdish issue, which from day one has been securitizing the Kurdish issue. Instead of resolving the conflict through democratic means, it is a policy of denial and annihilation. So you could also make this argument, actually, since last summer. You could also talk about practically a military takeover, because the government actually has been enforcing or doing pretty much everything what the Kemalist state and the Kemalist military have been standing for decades. So the relationship, whether it is the military calling the shots now, or it is the AKP or Erdogan, it's hard to tell at this time. Mine is also just a guess.
Thank you. Mr. Salih Muslim, the question is, Rojava has become a battleground for the superpowers and their proxies, and how the Kurds are managing the situation.
Not having to fight other people's wars.
Not having to fight other people's wars.
I think our society is very well organized. This is one. And secondly, our units, defense units, which is depends on our people, they are only for defending ourselves. They are not attacking everybody. And now, from the beginning, as you know, there was a regime in our, our cities and villages in our area, and we could liberate our areas. And then they attacked us. We didn't attack anybody. And we are able, I think, to defend ourselves, to defend our areas, because all the components now, we are united and we are getting stronger and stronger by organizing our society. And I think this is only the source we can depend on to defend ourselves. So we are just defending ourselves. We are not attacking anyone.
Well, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are running out of time. Michael?
I just have one question. There are several things I could have asked. I'm Michael Chai, and I'm from the Library of Congress. Have there been any,
have Israel in any way contacted you? Are there any relations between either the Israeli army or the Israeli government with the Syrian Kurds?
Okay. To Mr. Salih? Yes. I just want to make sure. The question is, has the state of Israel contacted you and offered you any military help against ISIS, right? Yeah, in the fight against ISIS.
Well, we don't have relations with Israel, and we don't have contacts, with Israel. But we are not enemies. We believe, the Middle East, if become a democratic Middle East, democratic federation of the Middle East, it wouldn't be against Israel also. The democratic measures, including everybody, and even including the Jewish also. But for the ISIS, nobody helped us directly, except this international alliance. If they are helping the alliance, it means they are helping us also. But I think Israel is not included in this international alliance.
Thank you. We ran out of time, actually. I'm sorry. We won't be able to take more questions. I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their valuable thoughts with us. Thank you so much.
Daha geçmiyor.